Why is this not the biggest news story? I've barely seen any major networks even tackle this, even talk about it. Do they not know?
Fulton County made a stunning admission about the 2020 election. After almost 5 years of assuring voters all procedures were followed, it turns out that may not be entirely true. Now they face some steep fines from the state elections board. Atlanta News First political reporter Doug Reardon is live tonight at the state capitol, where this all came out earlier this month. Doug.
Yeah, good evening, Blair. And those fines could crest $1 million if the state elections board gets exactly what they're asking for. Fulton County essentially admitted that there were unsigned tabulator tapes. Those are those pieces of paper akin to receipts that come out of the voting tabulator.
Was the 2020 election a lie? 315,000 votes processed without required signatures? That's not a clerical error. That's a effing crime scene. While Brad Raffensperger was out there telling everyone that Georgia had the most secure elections in the country, Fulton County was straight up ignoring state law on a scale that would make a banana republic blush. But here's what kills me. They're calling it a clerical error. A clerical error is forgetting to dot an I or missing a comma. This is systematic law breaking across 130 voting machines, covering almost every early vote cast in Georgia's most populous county. And now 5 years later, they're shrugging and saying, oops, our bad, my bad. Look, I get why people have trust issues with elections when shit like this keeps happening. Georgia law is crystal clear. Every single tabulator tape needs to be signed by a poll manager and 2 witnesses. It's not a suggestion. It's not optional. It's the effing law. These tapes are literally the receipts that prove the number of voters matches the number of votes counted. So when Fulton County admits they violated this law on 315,000 ballots, we're not talking about some minor paperwork mix-up. We're talking about the fundamental chain of custody that makes elections trustworthy in the first place. The county attorney, Ann Brumbaugh, stood up at a state elections board meeting and said, "We do not dispute that the tapes were not signed. It was a violation of the rule."
But it's a violation of a rule. They should have done it.
A stunning admission earlier this month from an attorney representing Fulton County's election board.
The tapes that are an issue in this case have been produced. They just weren't signed.
That's it? No big deal? There were some other people who are looking a lot more right these days. The election watchdogs, they pointed out a clerical error could be 1 tabulator tape not signed or 1 tabulator tape missing, not 148 tabulator tapes missing.
Garland Favorito, who runs the conservative watchdog group Voter GA, said the admission is disturbing to people who've had doubts about the 2020 election for years.
It's not vindication. It's just about accuracy and in the integrity and security of future elections.
But wait, it gets better. Not only did they sign the tapes, they also lost some of them, because apparently keeping track of election documents is too much to ask from the people running our democracy. Here's something that should terrify everyone. This kind of mistake only seems to get discovered years later after multiple lawsuits and court orders. Rudy Giuliani pretty much lost everything he had based on this thing. They started calling Rudy Giuliani senile. Donald Trump was almost thrown in jail, and so many other people's lives were ruined. The Justice Department had to sue Fulton County just to get basic election records. A federal judge had to order them to turn over the scanned ballot images they'd been hiding for over a year. This is obstruction. When you systematically violate election law and then fight tooth and nail to prevent anyone from examining what you did, that's intentional misconduct. State Elections Board member Janelle King nailed it. At best, this is sloppy and lazy. At worst, it could be egregious and it could have affected an election.
At best, this is sloppy and it's lazy. At worst, it could be egregious and it could have affected an election.
Some other ticker tapes and documents tied to the 2020 election were also missing, the county said. The revelation made waves nationally.
Could have. Could have. When you break the law on 315,000 ballots and then cover it up for 5 years, we're way past sloppy and lazy. Let me just tell you. The truth is, this validates every suspicion people had about the 2020 election in Georgia. Not the conspiracy theories about vote flipping or ballot stuffing, but the basic competence question. Can these people actually run an election according to law? I don't think so. And Brad Raffensperger's response was pure gaslighting. He posted on social media that a clerical error at the end of the day does not erase valid legal votes. My man, the whole point of the signature requirement is to verify that the votes are valid and legal in the first place. You get that, right? You can't skip the verification step and then claim that everything's fine. This is exactly why election deniers exist. It's not because they're crazy conspiracy theories. It's because election officials keep doing shit like this and then acting like it's no big deal. When you systematically violate election law and then dismiss it as a clerical error, you're basically telling half of the country their concerns don't matter. Here's what needs to happen right now. First, federal oversight of election processes in counties with repeated violations. If you can't follow basic state law, you don't get elections unsupervised. Second, real-time transparency requirements. Every tabulator tape, every signature, every step of the process needs to be documented and made publicly available immediately. No more hiding the documents for years while claiming everything's fine. Third, criminal penalties for election officials who violate state law. A little $5,000 fine per violation isn't enough when you're talking about hundreds of thousands of votes. People need to go to jail when they systematically break election law. When officials call law violations clerical errors, they're insulting your intelligence. Demand answers from your representatives about election integrity, not the political theater that's been going on. You still got people out here now fighting tooth and nail talking about this. We talked about Fonnie Willis a couple days ago and her meltdown in front of the Georgia Senate. She's actually in a position she doesn't have to be in. You know why? Because she shouldn't have been able to bring the case against Donald Trump and his co-defendants because they actually had a beef. They actually really did have a smoking gun. And now the Georgia Elections Board has pretty much verified their claim. They're smelling like roses right now. I mean, they might have some other problems going on. You know, I'm pretty sure they do. But as far as this goes, this might be vindication for them. And I don't know how many other people out there are still talking about this as if everything was fine. We had 4 years of Joe Biden. And if you had swung Fulton County the other way, the state of Georgia would have been one, and the election might have gone in an entirely different direction. That's crazy. That's crazy to think of, man. And all these things like Joe Biden giving the poll worker that was in question, that was being scrutinized, giving her a medal. Like, why was he giving her that medal again? Like, it's starting to look real funny in the light. But anyway,